Am I the a-hole for telling my mom I'm not an aunt and not going to pretend just for her? My mom married my stepdad when I, 20 female, was 7 and my stepsister was 6. You might think after all these years we would be good, but nope. She was such a freaking nightmare to deal with, and it only got worse after her dad took custody of her from her mom when she was 13. It wasn't just me either. She smashed up the collection of photos my mom had of my uncle, her brother who died when they were kids, and she made sure those photos could not be salvaged. She broke something valuable that her grandma, my stepdad's mom, owned. As for me, she would spit in my pillow so I couldn't sleep on it. She would tell me to give her stuff, so when I get a phone, she demanded I give it to her. If I was eating a chocolate bar, she demanded it. Her dad at one point had her in therapy 3 times a week, and he would punish the hell out of her for stuff like spitting and breaking stuff. One time, when we were 15 and 16, we both got in trouble because she tore the photo I had in my bedroom of my dad and grandparents, and she smudged food stains all over the fragments left, and I lost it. I told her she freaking sucked, and I was so glad she was not my real sister because I would never want to be family with someone so unlovable as her. That I never disliked anyone as much, and my life was so much better without her in it. After that, things were very different. My mom said she understood that I was upset, but that I should never say such cruel things to someone. She encouraged me to apologize and say I hadn't mean those things. But I had. My stepdad and I had gotten along okay up to that point, but me saying his daughter was unlovable and that I wished she had never been in my life was a step too much for him, which I get. We pretty much coexisted after that. Had therapy and all that, but I think my mom was the only one truly all in at first, and then my stepdad eventually. But my stepsister and I were not interested in repairing things. For me, they were just never good to begin with. Now I live with some friends and live pretty far from my mom. My stepsister recently moved back in with them after she had a baby. And my mom has tried to convince me that this is the perfect time to put the past in the past and move forward. She has brought up my being an aunt many times before. And I know she's telling the truth that my stepsister's ready for it too. Because she sent me a video via my mom's Facebook saying that she had forgiven me for what I said and was ready to move forward. I got pretty tired of my mom trying and calling me an aunt, so I told her I wasn't an aunt. I told her I have no siblings, and so I can't be an aunt. She told me it was childish to say that when everybody else is ready to move on from all that. I told her I was not, that I had never grown to care about stepsister and did not want to be in her life, or to have her in mine, and her child was an extension of that. She's mad at me for saying that, and my stubborn stance. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She has forgiven you, not apologized. Exactly. The entitlement continues. It's such a gaslight. I will never get what makes people narcissistic like this. People tend to not want to admit when they did something wrong. Even if the stepsister is better now and knows she was an a-hole, which may not be the case, it'll take a lot for her to not be stubborn and admit it. Not the a-hole, but everyone else's. Especially your mother and stepfather, who did nothing to stop your stepsister's cruel behavior, especially after she ruined precious photos of the deceased. Why on earth did they let her get away with so much? She was punished, but it was not like she cared all that much. Her dad was always grounding her, and he had her in therapy. But she just loved doing stuff to hurt people she and her mom didn't like, and didn't give a damn about the consequences as long as she got what she wanted. Like when she full-on had my mom sobbing after destroying the photos of her brother. Not a-hole. One day you might feel ready to let bygones be bygones, but until that time, they can't force you. Your feelings are valid. I also don't like that stepsister forgave you, but didn't owe her crap and apologize. She sounds like the same narcissistic a-hole who hurt you on a regular growing up. Wait, what? She had forgiven you? She bullied you for years, and she had the audacity to say that. Sorry, but she needs to apologize for everything she did and acknowledge her fault in this. You are so not an a-hole. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for calling my dad a freeloader? I, 16 female, have been having a rough day with my dad, 56 male, today. First, he came into my room when I was in the middle of doing a presentation to yell at me for not answering his text. He had sent it 6 minutes prior to coming in. Everybody in my class heard him insult me for about a minute, until he finally understood I was presenting after me telling him for the 100th time. Immediately after my presentation, when I left my room, he told me I should have alerted him I was going to be presenting and that everything that happened was my fault. Because of this, I was already pissed off at him, which is important for the next part of the story. Later in the day, after finishing all my schoolwork, I was cleaning the dishes, which were a lot of since my mom is busy with work and my dad refuses to clean his plates. I really don't mind doing them, but the problem came up when my dad came downstairs. He started the entire conversation with, "Wow, you're finally doing something helpful around the house." After the whole day of him being a jerk to me, I finally snapped. I may have used a bit too colorful of language, but the main gist of what I said was, "I don't want to hear it from you when you're more of a freaking freeloader than I am. You don't do the dishes, you don't do laundry, you don't work, you don't walk the dogs. You do nothing but sit in your room all day, watch the news, mope, and be freaking miserable." This obviously turned into a screaming match pretty quickly, with him calling me insensitive because I should have known that the only reason he doesn't have a job is because of COVID and how anxious he is with going out right now. I countered this by saying the least he can do is be nice, help around the house, alleviate some of the stress from my mom, or look for a job. After that, he told me to bug off, so I did. I went to my room and did finish the dishes. I'm worried I went too harsh on him by calling him a freeloader, because I know he has anxiety when it comes to COVID and working at this time. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. He was acting like a huge a-hole and deserved it. He's being hypocritical for judging you for not doing anything, even though he doesn't either. He needs this wake-up call. Judging her for not doing anything either. She was in class / doing homework most of the day, which should be her #1 priority at her age. This. Also, anxiety doesn't justify being a freeloader. Opie's dad is an awful dad, and it sounds like a worse husband. Lots of people have anxiety issues, and we manage to not be freeloading jerks to our loved ones. Not an a-hole. Any slight a-hole behavior seems justified. He needs to grow up. COVID doesn't stop you from doing dishes / cleaning your house, etc. He may be depressed and anxious, but in the real world you still have to get on with things. You can't just peace out because you don't want to handle things when you have responsibilities. Also, the berating you for ages in general is BS, let alone when you're trying to do your schoolwork. Congrats, you're more of an adult than your dad is. Not an a-hole. The worst part is that he isn't just doing anything. He's doing nothing and giving Opie crap about not doing enough. Anxiety and depression don't do that. That's pure and filtered a-holery. COVID is stopping him from working and leaving the house. So what's stopping him from doing laundry and dishes, etc.? I can get why you snapped at him, although if his laziness is an issue, it's best between him and your mom. Not a-hole. Yeah, I forgot to include that in my original post. I might have been an a-hole because I'm talking up to my dad, which isn't really my place. Kinda sounds like you earned it though. Parents often criticize without realizing how hypocritical they're being. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister I'm not her mom and it's not my job to keep looking after her? I'm 21 female, have a sister, 18 female. My parents put me in the worst position of being her keeper / caretaker when we were kids. I was expected to help her with homework, help her with friend problems. If she was in trouble with a kid, they would ask me to speak to the kid or an older sibling if they had one around my age. I was responsible for walking her to and from school on my way to school. My mom would make me late sometimes because she was running late and I wasn't allowed to leave without her. I was in a different school to her. It was so bad when we were teenagers. I got the job of explaining periods to her, the job of looking after her when they weren't home, and that was a pretty regular thing with them. When I moved out, I distanced myself from all of them. I didn't want to be responsible for her anymore, and I didn't want to end up having them push her to live with me. And she wanted everything. She wanted me to cook for her, buy clothes for her, take her places, help with homework and other school stuff. She would also want me to sit and listen to her vent all her problems. So anyway, she moved out of our parents' house and cut them out of her life. And then she reaches out to me and says she needs me to help her out. She was struggling to pay rent, struggling with school, and she wanted to move in with me or have me come over every day to help. I told her she needs to figure stuff out for herself. She told me it was my job to help her, and I said no. I said I am not her mom, and it's not my job to look after her. That it should never have been my job. She's pissed, and one of my friends thinks I was too harsh since I'm the only person who ever really took care of her. They think I should at least try to get her up and running and teach her to be independent. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, but to be honest, neither is your sister. Your parents, on the other hand, massive a-holes. What your parents did to you is parentification. It's a form of child abuse. You're completely correct. It shouldn't have been your job to raise your sister, and I'm sorry your parents made it your job. Although you of course have no obligation to continue to help your sister, I just want to note that it's not her fault either. You were both kids. Yes, sadly, the sister isn't at fault either. Maybe she could have figured it out that what they had is mainly considered weird and unusual. But since it has always been like this, I can see why she didn't. What Opie could do is give her advice on things if it isn't too much. Like if she asks her how to do laundry, to just text her the steps and what to look out for. But honestly, after all this, I would probably not even do that. But maybe Opie's a better person than I am. Not the a-hole, but the anger should be towards your parents, not her. I have not spoken to them since I moved out. But I just don't want to end up being responsible for her again. This falls into the category of life isn't fair sometimes. It's not always a simple matter of if-then decisions. Are you the a-hole for wanting your own life and own obligations? No. Is there a vulnerable human being that you grew up with who is going to struggle, and yes, is going to burden you if you try to help her? Yes. This isn't where Reddit can help you. You have to determine your own personal ethics/morals. For my part, I would feel it was my duty to help her. If for no other reason, then there is no one else to do so. And there is a significant chance that she will suffer severe emotional harm from being rejected by you and her parents. That's me, not you. I would consider that you could make an attempt with very specific boundaries and very specific expectations, but it would be a gamble. Expectations like, you will learn to cook for yourself, you will learn to manage your own schoolwork, etc. I will help you, but you must consistently show independence as a goal for you. Sometimes we take risks to help others because they need help and there's no one else to help. Living only for ourselves is not how I want to live. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for calling my parents a-holes after they shared my former therapy diary with my younger brother? I, 20 female, have a younger brother, 15 male. I was 5 when he was born and had suffered a trauma during the pregnancy. I was alone in the house with my grandpa who had passed away while my parents were out of town. That made his impending arrival very stressful for me. To be honest, I was angry and sad. I did not want a sibling, and I know the next 3 to 4 years were very rough for my family. I would scream and cry and have night terrors, and when neither of my parents showed him any attention, I would lose it. There were times I would tell them to send him away. Times I would think things you should never think about anyone really. But the fact he was a baby and I was so young, it was concerning. My parents put me into therapy, and for about a month I didn't open up. I didn't speak at all. I wouldn't even play with the toys. So the therapist came up with the idea for me to write stuff down. She would let me write and I would do that. Most of it in the first year to year and a half made no sense, but it helped her a little because she could pick up on some things. There was a lot of heavy stuff in there, stuff that I hate that I wrote and felt. But I also know from my therapist that it was not my fault. And trauma affects everyone differently. And for me, the change of a sibling as well as the feeling of losing my parents to him were intensified by the trauma I had suffered. And I was incapable of not feeling like he was the cause or like if he went away everything would get better. I actually never showed my parents the journals. They knew they existed, but the therapist suggested they should not read them. But if I ever felt like I wanted to go over the journals with them, I could. I chose not to. They knew some of how I felt, but I never wanted them to hate me for feeling how I did. There were a lot of rough days. My brother never remembered any of it though. It turns out my parents actually kept them. I put them in the trash a couple of years ago before moving out as a kind of way of moving on from that, and my parents kept and read them. And not only that, but they decided a few weeks ago that my brother had a right to know. I had no idea about any of this until my brother DM'd me going nuts, saying I was horrible and how could I ever say those things or feel those things, and I was sick. I called my parents and they straight up told me he felt he deserved to know, and so did they. I told them they were a-holes, and they should not hold that stuff against me. They called me sick and said what I wrote went far beyond normal sibling rivalry or trauma. They basically said how dare I call them a-holes after that. Now, I'm just doubting whether I am being a jerk now. I'm so mad and feel like I'll never escape from this mess. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, but digging another person's therapy journals out of the trash and showing them to family? Pure evil. Your parents just showed you exactly who they are. Believe them. I'm trying so hard to think of a good reason your parents show him those journals, Opie. There isn't one. It's inexcusable. Completely and utterly inexcusable. It's hard to blame the brother for being hurt. If they were as bad as you said, I'm sure it was upsetting, especially since he's still a kid himself. And even hard to blame him for lashing out. So he's not an a-hole. Nor are you. But your parents? What the hell is wrong with them? Not a-hole. Wow. Your parents found a way to take your healed trauma and re-traumatize you and your brother in one go. That's straight up impressive a-hole behavior on their part. Your brother is not an a-hole because, frankly, he's 15 and your therapy diary is probably way too much for him to digest and quantify right now. Maybe ever. Your parents are the a-holes times 2 for dragging him into this all over again. It's probably time to take a step back from interacting with them and go see a therapist. If your brother was willing, therapy with him would be a good idea to navigate this violent upheaval in your relationship. Upheaval in the relationship? Opie's parents destroyed it. It's probably gone. So not a-hole. Wow. First, nothing you did back then was your fault. You were a child. Second, that wasn't theirs to share. Hey, let's introduce hate and discontent into the family. Your parents are terrible humans and should be labeled as such by you to their faces.